Welcome, everybody, in Artificial Intelligence and Product Strategy podcast. My name is Arek Skuza, and this is a podcast about AI and data monetization, which is a place where you learn how to use AI and data monetization in your business. In this episode, we're actually discussing super interesting company called StoryBrain. I will just skip the introduction right now because I have a beautiful and amazing personalities that are looking after this company on daily basis, and they will introduce themselves in a second. I would highly encourage you considering subscribing to the podcast so you will never miss the episode. So, guys, welcome in the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. And please, stage is yours. Introduce yourself, tell about your role in the company, and obviously, you can quickly introduce the company, tell everybody what you guys building and why it's so exciting. So let's start right now.
Thanks a lot, Eric. Hi, this is Jiku. I'm the CEO of StoryBrain, and I'm joined with the CTO, Jibin Matthew, in the podcast. And we are building StoryBrain. StoryBrain is a Singapore-based AI company that converts your product pages into short-form videos that automatically improves based on the segment or based on user behavior, seasonal variations, and a whole lot of other factors. That's a very short intro into what we are doing. I'll hand over to Jibin. Jibin, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, this is Jibin from StoryBrain. I'm the CTO and co-founder of the company. I take interest in learning machine learning, so that's been my interest. I've been a two-time founder, and that's how me and Jiku we met and formed this company. I have been an author two times, so I take interest in learning more about machine learning. I'm keen about software engineering in general.
Thank you so much. And I need to tell you, everybody, that those people, they have amazing story to tell because they're coming from India, but they were successfully working on their financial round in Singapore, and they raised money from the pretty well-known seed stage VC company called Antler, which we'll be talking about that in a minute. But as they mentioned, they are actually rooting this company in Singapore, which we'll also jump back to that. But guys, in your own words, what is StoryBrain and what is the company history? Please explain that to our listeners because there is a lot of AI Day, ML, but also what's the product and what's the value for customers?
So, Eric, we started off in Singapore from 2019, October.
Okay.
So basically, we were part of the third cohort of Antler Singapore. Antler was actually starting, and it has been only 2 or 3 years since Antler started. And we were part of that third cohort in Singapore. And they chose us while we were working on something very new back then. We were doing something that is popularly known now as generative AI. We were trying to build an AI that creates media content for e-commerce companies. That was the first pitch, so to speak, because it's a massive industry. It's a $32 billion industry that is powering the entire e-commerce market. Like, for instance, if you take a look at any e-commerce page, let's say an Amazon page, a Flipkart page, or a Macy's or a JCPenney page, you will see this page having a lot of things. But the most important thing that will strike your eyes is the media that is there. That let it be an image or a video, but it is that specific thing that takes up the largest screen real estate. What we set out to do was to provide media in such a way that it gives you much more lift, better, more engaging, more converting media. That is where we started off. The idea actually was well accepted in Antler, and then we went for the demo day on Jan 2020, and another VC really loved the idea. They supported us, Investigate VC, and shout out to Michael if he's listening. He really got the idea the moment we explained that on stage. He and a bunch of other angels chose to support us and take us to the next round. So we did our pre-seed from Antler just to back up, and then a seed round from Investigate VC that happened around mid 2020, and then another round is actually right now going on. We are in pre-series A stage, thankfully. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, Jiku, I'm sorry I'm interrupting you, but this is
No, no,
fascinating
no.
story. Let me interrupt you a little bit. It sounds so easy. You be there, they like it, and they put money in it. But we all know that it's not that easy, and it's not going like it's not like one night thing that you just go there, present yourself in the
Absolutely.
evening, and you got money on your account in the morning. So I would like to ask you guys for two things. Technology perspective to that. How was important the technology part of it? For Antler to step in, and also any advice you can give to people like building AI companies from the financial perspective. So actually, two questions.
You're absolutely right. I might have made it sound very easy. Definitely, it was a huge struggle. The whole program with Antler was around 3 months. We had to convince them with different prototypes. And something that we are quite keen on in our company, me, Jibin, and there are two other co-founders, Nikhil and Rakesh. All of us are strongly technically aligned. We have built multiple companies together. We have worked on different products in different industries. So for us to prototype something is something quite more easier than the average team. So we were able to actually
Hmm.
show them an interesting prototype. Something very interesting happened during that time. Our first prototype was a Figma plugin in back in 2019. The
Okay.
moment when Figma was just releasing their plugin store. What got interesting was that we were part of the first few plugins that were actually being discussed. And in fact, Figma reached out to us to actually do a small conference like thing and everything. And it was really, really well received. This
Okay.
actually gave Antler the confidence that, these guys are not doing this actually back in the day, looked completely new. Nobody was actually talking about the term generative AI didn't exist at that time. And the
Okay.
concept of actually creating something with completely with AI seemed completely alien at that point. But since we were able to do demo that actually showed them the proof of concept, that made sense, and that too we were able to pull it off in around a couple of
All
months.
right.
And we showed that for the demo day, and other investors were also very impressed. And plus, as Jill mentioned, he's an expert in machine learning, and my background is I have been actually working in user experience and human computer interaction for the last 10, 12 years. So that actually helped a lot. Yes, Eric, you were going to ask me.
So just to add one more thing, just because Jiku made it sound very easy, one of the conditions for us to get the investment, like while Antler announced that we would get the investment, the condition was that we should get some more sleep before they put in some more money.
Okay. From what you guys said, I could see that because AI sounds like a magical thing that can do everything, but the demo and the product was actually super important milestone for the investors to understand what you guys actually doing. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And one more piece I missed out. The most important piece, in my opinion, that actually made it convincing was we were attacking a problem with a massive TAM. TAM as in total addressable market. The size
Okay.
of the problem was massive. It was a $32 billion industry that we were planning to disrupt. So that made sense. A genuinely good product that has genuinely good background in tech, which can be actually built up by a team that actually understands the market and is a big enough problem to solve. This is one of the few
All
parameters
right.
that early stage VC looks at. And Antler is no different. And they were smart enough to actually choose and invest in companies that is working on large problems. Even if you don't, your solution exactly doesn't fit it, if the team is smart enough and the problem is big enough, you will be able to find a solution in that space that makes sense down the road.
Okay.
That is the bet that they are taking. Yes.
Perfect. So, guys, when we speaking about like a product and the market, so who are you targeting? What's the target group or personas of your service slash product?
So basically, we are targeting the e-com companies in the world. So interestingly, we are actually taking the step wherein we are actually going from the large companies to the small companies. There is a reason for that. Our product initially, while we were building, it was homogeneous to a particular product group. So basically, we started off because we were a small team raising a small amount of money, right? We didn't actually support the entire products that were possible. So we chose a small, tiny segment. So what that segment was, PropTech. So we chose PropTech, and then we started converting their product pages into short form videos, which was
Okay.
very interesting. And but unfortunately, something else happened during that time. If you remember the timeline that I mentioned, 2020 is when we started. We raised our second round, and we actually went into the market trying to sell this. But unfortunately, COVID hit, and practically everything, even the companies actually froze their intake or integrations and so on and so forth. Like almost there were even large companies actually who promised us orally couldn't actually fulfill that promise to us. So it was quite hard. 2020 to around 21 end, it was a very, very hard and arduous journey that we had to actually take. And we practically couldn't actually convert a customer, even though many people in the decision making team itself felt that, yeah, this is great. Let's actually try to give it a try. It took us nearly an year to get our first two customers. So one was,
A year. A year.
yeah, a year from the funding. It was very tough during
Okay.
that time. But after this, after the first major two customers realized that so the market was actually getting more aligned towards what we were doing. And the biggest break happened in 2022. The reason being, Google and OpenAI released massive generative AI products. DALI and Google's image generators actually came out, and we were not doing 0 to 1 anymore. As you might have read the Peter Thiel's book, we were practically doing 0 to 1 before that. We had to explain why this is important from the scratch. Right now, yeah, we are a generative AI company. The whole market has just converted, and we have been working on this for the last 3 years, and it made a lot of sense. Now the way we actually introduce ourselves to other customers completely changed. That helped a lot.
Okay.
So we were
So,
right at the right place at the right time. That helped a lot.
so the other good thing, though COVID had a negative impact on for a short term, but the other thing that COVID kind of helped was people were spending more time on digital devices, and people were primed to seeing like short form videos or short form content. So after like the COVID wave hit
Interesting.
and like people started going back to the offices, even then their mode of consuming information still continued to be these short form videos, and that's when many of the e-commerces have started realizing that engaging media is much more important for the coming times.
Interesting, guys. Okay, so I understand from that there was a lot of also coming on the market, like a huge market shift, or I would say market restructured, that actually also open new opportunities, which considering you have an Antler investment and the demo, you can actually explore them and figure it out who is your new target group. That's very interesting, actually, insight. But since you mentioned the generative AI, is also I want to pick up a little bit of Jibin brain and ask him about how you guys use AI in a product. Everybody here today is actually people see GPT today and all these generative AI solutions. Finally, they understand what does it mean that AI is involved in something. So I would like to actually extend the same question on your engine and on your product. So what does actually mean that there's AI in the StoryBrain?
When we started, like back in 2019, 2020, early phases, we were trying to build these systems by ourselves. So we had a rough pipeline in our heads, and then we put our minds to it and started building a system to make sure that it's an end-to-end system that we built. But like going forward, like once we started chunking out these different segments, the first segment came out to be an extraction engine. So what it does is basically goes to a certain web page, sees the information there, extracts out the critical parts from it. So we were
Mhm.
building this system. We used our custom models and customized on the open source models that were available. But then towards late 2021, we realized that using GPT was like much better in terms of what we could extract. And the way it structures data is like miles better than what we were doing. So we understood that it's going to be good to use GPT for our systems. We still have certain custom models that would extract out this critical information. Wherever like GPT seems lacking, we put in an extra effort to like make sure that it gives out the ideal solutions that we want. Followed by that, once we have the structured data with us, we have a media generation engine. So these are a series of custom built video or image rendering pipelines that we've built so that it takes in information from this structured data, use a combination of systems like Stable Diffusion, and build out videos or frames by frames, and then we stitch together these frames so that it's a coherent video or an image that we want. So we ensure that the product that we are trying to place is placed using Stable Diffusion so that it looks perfect in the particular environment that we want to put in. So, for example, if it's a Christmas themed video, the backgrounds or the environments would be built from these systems, and the product would be placed in such a way that it looks natural within it. We are further working on 3D based model integration. We are using photogrammetry to embed 3D visualizations into these videos.
I see. So let me a little bit wrap it up. So first, you go on a website, you try to understand the context and everything what is around, like by extracting the information. Then you structure everything so it's more manageable and you can actually understand the context in a structured way. And then leveraging that information, you actually work on a video. So the product that you want to place is actually considering the context, but at the same time, it's perfectly blended into the video. So when I go on an e-commerce website and I trigger that video, it looks very natural on one way. And the second thing is that it actually fits the context. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
And because it's like an AI-based system, so we could build one video entirely from end to end, or we could do 2 videos or 10 videos or n different variations of these videos. And we have like statistical models that determines which variation out of all these variations that we created works the best. So essentially making sure that we create multiple variations that are more primed to getting better conversions.
That's super great. I really like that. So from the value proposition perspective, I understand that thanks to your product, e-commerce, website, and everybody actually selling something online can actually have a new form of presenting the product. And that is being created dynamically, considering the context and perfectly blended into the video. So it looks like very natural. So I guess e-commerce can skip a lot of marketing agency support and manual work because you first automate, but also intelligently put that in a context.
Absolutely.
Super nice.
Yeah. One more thing that I would like to actually add, Jibin, I'm sorry to interrupt. There is a reason I would like to actually place a larger scope to understand why this sort of a movement, why this sort of a idea actually makes a lot of sense. Think about what is actually happening in the world. There are 2 categories of major companies. One is social media companies and the other one is e-commerce companies. Social media companies are trying to sell right now, as you can see in TikTok or Instagram and so on and so forth. And they are building solutions to become a marketplace. In other words, and e-commerce companies, on the other hand, are trying to be like social media companies, but they have a huge problem because their product is not actually made or optimized for better user experience. It is only for one purpose: come, buy, go. That's it. Nobody is going to an e-commerce site to just, kill some time. People go to Instagram Reels or TikTok to kill some time. This is not there. So e-commerce companies are trying to actually bridge this gap by creating something like a video feed. For example, last December itself, Amazon is already testing out new tab, something similar to Instagram Reels, to actually provide video feed. The problem with this is the number of SKUs or the number of products in these websites are in the tune of millions. You can't just completely convert every one of these products into a video feed immediately. This requires some sort of an automation. And this is where we come. We can convert current e-commerce sites into video feed sort of a experience that completely transforms it, because the current generation tends to expect their information that is being consumed as short form videos, nothing else. The information consuming modality has fundamentally shifted over the last 2 years because of COVID, because of TikTok, and because of Instagram Reels. This is fundamental.
Great.
Why we are actually doubling down on this.
I
In
see.
fact, the companies that are actually doing videos, for
Uh-huh.
example, Netflix, in spite of having long form contents and multiple variations of it, even they have like a tab right now called Fast Labs, making sure that these are short, crisp videos that people would watch and like scroll just like a Instagram reel or a TikTok feed.
If you have seen that in your iOS app, you can see that. Yes.
Guys, you mentioned that GPT, when it occurs and it became the reality, it influenced the product development roadmap. At least that's what I understood.
Yes.
Can you
Yes.
elaborate a little bit on that? Also, like how that changed your product development?
So, as Jibin was mentioning, we were looking into extracting this data in a smart way using different techniques. Many of them work really well, but as I mentioned, there was a one fundamental reason why we actually dropped it. The reason why the custom things that we were developing were constrained into product categories. For example, our model could extract excellently for prop tech companies. Our model could do really well for mobile phones or for electronics. But when it
Hmm.
came to apparel, it started failing because the sort of data, it was not good enough to actually consider any product. But when GPT came, we
Hmm.
tried to extract data using GPT, which was much more generic. It was trained on a massively larger corpus of data, and this enabled us to actually move from specific narrow fields to an engine
Broader.
that can, yeah, broader, extremely broader. I'll
Okay.
give you one simple significance for this. If you take a look at the number of Shopify sites, there are 4.3 million Shopify sites that are available. But if you ask me
Hmm.
6 months before, can you why can't you go before the go after the Shopify sites? I will say my product is specific to this particular industry, no more. In the next month, we are actually making it completely generic so that any product page from anywhere, you drag and drop into it, you will get a short form video in 10
Right.
seconds. That's it.
Right. Oh, all right. That's a good leverage of GPT. Yeah, that's actually super interesting. But you also mentioned that you are using open source models slash techniques. So are you saying that you kind of blend because GPT with other open source models or your proprietary trained models? How that works?
Open source, definitely we are actually using. So we also had, just as Jivan was mentioning, our pipeline is completely custom built. But there were certain things that we felt that would essentially improve the product in a significant way. I'll give you one simple example for this. Seasonal variations, a significant part of any e-commerce company. So, for example, the maximum sale probably happens from October till Jan because of the holiday season, because of the Halloween, because of Christmas, New Year, and so on and so forth, especially in the West. So, what happens is if you're able to create media that is aware of the current season in place, maybe it is the Halloween, maybe it's a Christmas, maybe it's the New Year, whatever. Depending upon that, it would be nice. So, we had a set of systems that did that. It was a combinatorial system, which was not essentially an AI initially to actually just do the backgrounds. But once stable diffusion came in, we realized that why do we need a combinatorial thing? We can completely custom create the backgrounds in such a way that
Okay.
depending upon the region, depending upon their language, depending upon their culture, depending upon their season, we can actually give contextual videos that make sense, that actually gives them significant value and significant context that is based on their cultural or background.
Additional thing that happened with bringing in stable diffusion to our system was that initially when we were rendering these images or videos, the products tend to have certain mismatch with the backgrounds or certain aberrations used to be there.
Uh-huh.
But with stable diffusion coming in, the product would like seem as if it is actually placed in an environment, making sure that it's seamless feel or a seamless feel to the end user to see the product.
Guys, I guess also that your product would be super interesting for an e-commerce website, also from another perspective. If I can imagine you can create video in 10, 20, 30 seconds, it's perfectly put into the context and the products are blended perfectly with the background and everything like that. You can quickly deliver A/B testing, correct?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. That is the final fourth point that we wanted to actually mention. What Jibin mentioned about variations. is essentially for doing continuous A/B testing for smaller and smaller segments that was unbelievable, that was not at all possible before. So for every small segment, let's say 20 to 21-year-old from this state, this part of this country, this language speaking people, and so on and so forth. This might not be very intuitive for a Westerner, but in India, there are 20 dominant languages. If you are able to create content specific for each of those regions, this is a huge, huge advantage in India. And that is exactly something that we are working on right now. And we are in talks with one of the largest e-commerce companies in India right now to integrate. This is one of the key aspects and key offer value propositions that we are actually banking on.
In fact, there is one more aspect to the product, as in it's a data product in itself. For example, the sort of information that we display to the customer. So there could be critical information that a customer might be looking at. And we would be able to uncover this critical piece of information that the customer is looking at, as opposed to showing in some generic information that the user is not interested in. So in long run, with multiple variations that we test, we would be able to identify, say, a specific information is more relevant as opposed to the other. In a PropTech sort of a scenario, this could be something like, say, this showing a square feet information is much more important than, say, whether it's an old building or whether it has some certain facilities. So these sort of insights could be leveraged from a product like ours.
Okay, I understand that. One more question regarding this business. Are those videos you're creating, do you need to cope with copyrights anyway, or it's just the originally created content that is copyright free and actually e-commerce, they don't have to pay royalties and things like that? Is that another advantage, or I don't see a full big picture here?
This is another interesting aspect of what is the coming war of copyright issues that are going to happen. So basically, Stable Diffusion's, just in the context of Stable Diffusion, their model and almost all other generative AI models that are generating media is being attacked right now by many forces across the world for copyright infringement at the moment. But these models are not exactly like it had. For example, Stable Diffusion's previous version had some images, and you could actually ask it to create a image that is based on a specific artist. They have completely removed all of that capabilities right now. So unless and their typical offerings that they are actually giving does not have these things right now. So they are actually using it from copyright off images that do not have this problem. But in general, the pipeline that we are using, we are very specific to say that, if you want to remove the Stable Diffusion based possible model wherein there could be a copyright infringement, we could easily switch it off. The entire model, the entire pipeline that we are using doesn't have a single element that can be construed as a copyright infringement, because the entire thing is completely built by us. The only place where it has even a smallest degree of doubt is where Stable Diffusion is being used. Even that can be switched on and off. That is a great advantage, but if laws completely come and constrain it, we can easily switch it off.
Interesting. My last question will be, I would like to ask Jibin, because he's close to the technology and AI. What would be your advice or maybe a learning you want to share with everybody listening to this podcast about properly using AI in a product? You play a lot with that. You pick up the specific techniques, models. You probably spend a lot of time with labeling, unlabeled data, structured, not structured, things like that, figuring out what to use, how to blend models properly, when they should go to production and when they are not ready to go to the production, things like that. So what would be your advice for everybody that wants to build AI company from that technology perspective?
A couple of years back, a year or two before, people used to build custom models for each and every little application that they wanted to build. So this is true even for machine learning, like image-based applications or like NLP-based applications. But there is a huge shift in the way the machine learning community is changing, in the sense that large models are easing out a lot of barriers for these smaller applications to come up. So this includes large language models like LLM, there is another concept coming in called LVM, where large vision models. So these are able to easily automate a lot of this initial data creation, or the barrier to entry in terms of how much data that you need to collect. You have to label it. You have to ensure that the data is in order. So a huge shift is happening from like these individual constrained models to these large language models or larger models. So one could leverage those to build the systems and test out the possibilities that are there from using these models. Like once you reach a stage wherein you find that there are gaps from what is generated from these large language models or larger models, you could build custom fine-tuned models on top of these models in order to fit your use cases. So that is one place you could focus on, fine-tuning these larger models to get better results, and building out these applications and running proper tests on various scenarios would actually help optimize your solution and bringing it into production. And like if you are able to like optimize the model in a way that it runs on smaller devices. I'm sorry, I'm thinking while I'm speaking, so it's taking a little bit of time.
Yeah, I know. But you mentioned something like use case. I understand that finding interesting and strong use case on one side it's not easy, but on the other side it's super critical for then kind of like deciding which way you want to go. Be huge models, smaller models, or open source, or hiring models, training them all, right? So the use case plays a critical role. At least I understood that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Guys, I really appreciate you found time being busy so much with building StoryBrain. Thank you so much for finding a time and discussing that with us here. I believe that this product will be a success. I'm sure that what you guys shared, it's actually something like down to the earth, very like roll up the sleeve and go to build AI company. It's not theoretical. It's not like we would like to build something. The product is there, it's working, and it's actually being used by the customers and supported by company like Antler, VC company, obviously. Thank you so much, Jibin and Jiku. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. In the next episode, we are thinking about a recording again about data monetization and AI product strategy, and that's what you can expect always here. Please remember, this podcast is always about, it's a place where you can learn how to use AI and data monetization in your business. And my guests today are a real example of that. They just built it, they did it, and it's working. It's supported by investors. So living proof that AI can deliver fantastic things. Don't forget to subscribe if you consider this a valuable thing. I would like to encourage you to subscribe to the channel. And I hope to meet you in the next podcast. Thank you so much, Jibin and Jiku. Thank you, everybody, and see you in the next episode.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.